Hey guys, I'm the Nostalgia Kid. I remember it and you should too. Okay, so today I'm talking about the Cloverfield franchise. Now, to anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about when I say Cloverfield franchise, well, especially when you're probably thinking, well, there's only two movies. No, technically there's three. You have the original movie Cloverfield, then you have 10 Cloverfield Lane, and then you have the Netflix movie Cloverfield Paradox. Now, let's start with the original movie, which was just named Cloverfield, if I remember correctly. This movie, when it was first being advertised and it was first being talked about, it was being given all kinds of amazing, just mystery, I guess you could say, if that's the correct word. Because you had these weird trailers showing some kind of attack on New York. You had like the Statue of Liberty head getting like ripped off, like, and them not showing the monster for like any of the trailers, and then the whole thing looks like a found footage kind of movie. Like it looks like it was trying to recapture the Blair Witch kind of situation, but at the same time like do it as a monster movie, which I always feel like was a very interesting concept. Also, another very amazing thing is they didn't release this at like a time of the year when you would expect them to release like a monster movie, not like October or November or anything like that. No, they released this movie in like January of I want to say 2008. If I'll Google it later and I'll put it up here, some right around here in the video. Also, the marketing for this movie was very unusual too. Like if you looked in, like there wasn't an official. Well, there was and there wasn't at the same time an official Cloverfield website, but there were also a series of other like side websites which showed other characters who were in the movie, uh, and it was just different websites that had videos, and then sometimes you'd see a link to a social media website that would talk about a person who is a character in the movie and talk about a party, talking about jobs, and these are in videos would basically talk about like a government conspiracy and some kind of like or like corporate conspiracy and corporate cover up with like the government somehow also being involved. So a lot of very interesting things. And if you really wanted to be an internet detective, it's like this was something that was definitely up your alley. Like even the trailer and the release date had like I said, there was an official website, but it was a little tricky to get to. You had to type in the release date that was shown in the trailer and follow that up with, I want to say, .com, and then you would get to the website. And then, even then, like some of the social media pages and other websites that had videos and stuff on them, they were a little bit tricky to get to. Like I said, if you're an internet detective, you could have been able to find them, and it would have been an interesting rabbit hole to go down. Okay, and then you have the movie itself, which came out in 2008, which wasn't bad, and it was pretty good. The CGI, unfortunately, does not really hold up super duper well. The best thing that I feel like holds up well about it is the whole found footage idea. Just because, I don't know, I feel like we haven't really seen a lot of found footage movies over the years. We both have and haven't, but this is definitely one of the bigger budget. It's like imagine if they did a Godzilla movie that was like a found footage movie. Like instead of seeing the perspective of the soldiers or the scientists or anybody, you just have a random citizen with like a camcorder running around and seeing their perspective and seeing like the horror of like this giant monster attack in the middle of the city. So I feel like that's definitely the best thing about this movie. And it definitely, some of the lines, if you listen to the characters, some of the lines they say do hint at some of the stuff that was talked about on these like secret websites and social media pages. If you had done the whole internet detective thing, like I'd said. But also, I feel like if you did do the whole internet detective thing, then I feel like to a certain degree it would have been like a real swing and a miss. Just because, like I said, all this like internet advertising and secret videos and web pages, they all point at what looks like some kind of insane mystery that could almost, a certain degree be real. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like they're selling you on one idea, but they're giving you another. And then, so, I don't know, I feel like that's a lot of work to go through just to see what for the most part would have been an average monster movie. And I don't know, I feel like they almost could have built up to a completely different, like, spy thriller kind of movie, where maybe a character in some of those videos could have gone looking for a person that was talked about in those videos. I'm not going to go in the details of those videos because at the end of the day, I have no idea how much they impact the overall Cloverfield universe that apparently exists. And I don't even know if they're even still considered relevant to anything else that happens in the Cloverfield universe. Okay, now that we've already talked about the Cloverfield universe, now I'm using the quotation marks. Um, yeah, like I said, like after the movie came out, I guess the director and the producers and everybody involved were not sure exactly what they wanted to do. Well, there was talk about doing another found footage style film, but maybe having it take place during the original movie and a different group of people. That definitely would have been interesting, and honestly, one thing they could have done is they could have based that off of some of this, like, promotional material that was advertised about. And, I don't know, given some of the people who actually did the whole internet detective thing, a little bit more of a payoff, I feel. Just because it's like, I've only seen bits and pieces of what I'm talking about, but basically it talks about how this person works for this company. He left some like recordings and some paperwork for his girlfriend, and she's like posting these videos or like recording these videos and supposedly mailing to him or something along those lines. I don't know exactly, but still, it was very interesting, and you could have maybe done a film following her investigating him and it leading into the events of maybe the original film. So that's one direction they could have taken. Here's the direction they wound up taking. Okay, now, you're probably wondering what the direction they wound up taking, which I feel like really wasn't a direction at all, in a lot of ways. Even though I'm calling this a Cloverfield franchise, they really didn't plan out another film, just because the original director, I believe, was actually J.J. Abrams. I think the whole reason he wanted to do this movie is he just wanted to do a monster movie, and he wanted to do it in a very different and more original way. I feel like he did pull that off. And then obviously, J.J. Abrams, he's a huge name, and not long after he did this movie, he wound up doing Star Trek, he did Star Wars, he did so many other movies, so I can only assume that, like, months after this movie came out, he already had, like, 2 or 3 years worth of other movies and other projects to direct or produce or whatnot. So because of that, the Cloverfield franchise kind of was left hanging in the wind, basically. Okay, but we did get a semi-sequel, and I say sequel, again, in really huge quotation marks, with 10 Cloverfield Lane. Now, how does this connect to the original movie? Well, actually, it really doesn't. Now, I've already talked about this in another video. I believe it was the Alien Covenant video I did years ago. I may put a link somewhere around here, so if you want to watch that. But basically, 10 Cloverfield Lane was originally supposed to be its own original movie. It was part of a whole plan that the movie studio had to come out with one relatively low-budget movie every year for over the course of like 10 years. But due to budgetary reasons, they canceled the entire idea. But by the time they canceled it, this movie had been fully filmed and was essentially just sitting in a DVD case somewhere. And instead of just letting it sit, they decided, well, how about we slap the name of another franchise we can think of on it, do a handful of reshoots and make it work for that franchise, and then put it out there. And it just happened to be the Cloverfield franchise. So that's how the Cloverfield franchise became a franchise, period. They just wanted to make this movie sell probably double what it would have at minimum, and at least make some of their money back. That's exactly what they did. Now, every time I think of this situation, I always wonder in the back of my mind, what would that movie have really been like if it was never connected to the Cloverfield franchise? How would it have performed? Because I saw it, and honestly, I feel like it was a pretty decent movie. Could have definitely stood on its own and gotten its own little crowd. But overall, I mean, it's connected to the franchise now, so now the next movie in this movie franchise that now apparently exists would have to be the Cloverfield Paradox. Now, yet again, this is another movie where it was supposed to be its own thing. It was But then I guess they decided to make it part of the Cloverfield universe for some reason, just out of nowhere. Now, if you're wondering why you really probably may have only heard a little bit about this movie or don't know a whole lot about this movie, it's because this movie only came out to Netflix. And it got like one or two trailers. Like, I think within a week of this movie coming out and releasing on Netflix. Like, one of the trailers came out 3 hours before it dropped on Netflix, so. I mean, it just shows their faith in this project. Okay, now, like I've already said, this movie was originally supposed to be its own thing. Again, have no idea what it was supposed to be named or what it was supposed to be like. All I know is that it was a Netflix production. It was co-produced by Netflix, to my knowledge. And they just decided to slap Cloverfield on it, hoping they would get more views. I'm not sure if they were trying to do some kind of, like, I don't know, I guess update the franchise, make it more viral or something like that. But, again, this is just another movie where it's like, I don't know, I just shake my head. Because it's like, it's not a bad movie. 10 Cloverfield Lane and Cloverfield Paradox are not bad movies, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's just... Hey guys, future me here, so I'm just realizing I really didn't explain 10 Cloverfield Lane. Basically, it's a movie starring John Goodman and two completely random actors. Sorry for not remembering their names. But basically, it's about three random strangers essentially living inside of a bunker because some kind of disaster or attack happens. They don't know if John Goodman is their savior or if he is somehow their captor. And all you really know is there's rules to follow, and the main character goes back and forth on whether or not she's going crazy or the whole world around her is crazy. Then there's the next movie in this franchise, Cloverfield Paradox. This movie is about a group of scientists in a space station called Cloverfield. Basically, they're trying to invent a new power source in order to save the world. But while they're working, political tensions and even physical tensions down below and on the space station grow high. And the scientists don't know exactly who they can trust, who's friend, who's foe. And while they're researching and while these political tensions are growing high, it kind of seems like the monster from the original movie is wreaking havoc on Earth. So, in a way, it almost looks like that all their research may have been for nothing. This is also where things get confusing because this movie looks like it takes place sometime in the near distant future, while the other movies take place basically during present day. But yeah, none of these movies are bad movies. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, I guess you could say. Just because it's like, it's 2021. We have the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was completely planned, which for the most part was completely planned out. It was organized out, and they knew exactly what movies were going to come out when, and they have a whole short list of directors and writers on hand, basically, and including actors who were ready to progress the cinematic universe. So, I don't know. I mean, obviously, what Marvel did is probably the gold standard, and it's hard to not think about them when we talk, like, cinematic universes, because depending on how much you like or dislike each individual movie, for the most part, the entire franchise of Marvel is, for the most part, pretty good. And I think James Rolfe said it best once, they really haven't made, like, a bad movie. Like, most of the movies, it's like, if nothing else, they're not bad and they're watchable. And they're definitely good. All the movies in the Cloverfield franchise are good, but they're just not, they're so loosely connected. I could tell you the plot of each of these movies individually, and you could be like, they're all part of the same franchise? Hey guys, me editing again. So I was thinking you could easily say something similar about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how it's a little bit confusing, but it has the uniting fact of this is all based on the Marvel comic books. So because of that, you could always Google something or look something up, be like, oh, well, that character's from this comic book, that character's from this comic book, and so on. So that is the big difference here. But the obvious difference is that Marvel spent billions of dollars and spent years planning and strategizing all these things out, um, getting all this stuff figured out. But at the same time, it's like Paramount and all the other movie companies and studios involved in the Cloverfield franchise, they had plenty of time. They didn't know what they wanted to do with a sequel to the original Cloverfield. And it was 8 years before they decided to make anything connected to the Cloverfield franchise now. And even then, it was another 2+ years after that, and for the next movie. There are talks, as the recording of this video, of possibly another Cloverfield movie somehow taking place in this whole universe. But honestly, at this point, I think they should either reboot the franchise or just kick it to the curb. Because, I mean, it left somewhat of an impact. There are people talking about it here and there on the internet. But, I don't know. They could definitely live without this franchise. And so could you. So overall, none of the movies here are bad. The only issue is that they really don't connect. It's not a situation of like, you see, oh, these characters pop up in this movie, and these other characters popping up in that movie, or oh, them talking about this technology and using it here. There is a little bit of that, but honestly, I mean, trying to connect these movies. I mean, the newest movie in the franchise looks like it takes place close to 100 years in the future, if I had to make a guess. And it's like the oldest movie takes place during the relative present, and then the middle movie takes place also again during the present. And it's like, I don't know, it's confusing to me. And it's just, it's a mess. Okay, well, that's just about everything I have to say about the Cloverfield franchise. I feel like I've already repeated myself at least once in this video, so I'm the Nostalgia Kid. I remember it, and you should too.